In this episode, a gigantic swimming parking lot, the world's largest car carrier. Also, the most powerful of all, a tractor designed for mega farms. And finally, the most powerful and highest telescopic crane in the world. The Case IH Steiger 620, the most powerful tractor in the world. With 620 horsepower, it works on the biggest farms in the world. Years of research went into it, with one goal: developing an indestructible machine that can accomplish the most extreme tasks.
When I started, the largest tractor was about 400 horsepower. Now we're at 620.
And this much power is necessary on a modern mega farm.
It's nice to have the big one for this.
But the mega tractor must also withstand long-term stress. The Steiger 620 gets hardly any downtime. The Canadian province of Manitoba, one of the most important agricultural regions in the world. Today's job: field work over an area of 2.5 square kilometers, the equivalent of 357 soccer fields. To manage such a heavy workload every day, farmers need a machine with the most powerful modern technology. Oak Nook Farm is one of the biggest grain farms in Manitoba. It produces 15,000 tons of grain per year. Most of the field workers have long since been replaced by technology. Farmer Wayne Dutchison and his son Justin are preparing the Steiger 620 for today's operation. They can't afford to lose any time. Due to bad weather this spring, they have only an extremely small time window for sowing.
It's been real wet this last fall, and now this spring is shaping up the same way to be real wet. So we have to, when the sun's shining, we gotta get the seed in the ground.
A hard day lies ahead of the farmers. They spend up to 20 hours at a time in their tractors. The reason is the enormous time pressure. The longer they need for sowing, the smaller the harvest will be.
Oh, we'd like to get probably about
600 acres done?
600 acres seeded this unit today.
No, we get more done with this one than the last ones we had, and definitely more productive, more power, more efficient, more done in one day. No.
250 hectares of land await Wayne and Justin Dutchison. The 620 can do 16 hectares per hour. It pulls a 20-ton sowing machine, one of the widest and heaviest pieces of field equipment. It lets farmers cover a larger area in less time. The smaller tractor comes along to the field to move stones out of the way that could impede the sowing. With its 150 horsepower, however, it cannot pull the high-performance farm implement. For that, the 620's maximum power and endurance are necessary.
Just really impressed. Big power, it's got the hydraulic power, and also you can set all your GPS coordinates here to operate it without steering it.
The tractor's advantage: it pulls the biggest implements over the field, but with minimal impact on the soil. Thanks to the tire's huge surface area, the tractor's weight is distributed equally over the ground, thus exerting less pressure. The soil remains loose and well supplied with oxygen. The result, a larger harvest. Justin Dutchison checks how deep the tires are sinking into the soil.
It's about 1.5 inches. That's very good compaction for this field. Huge tractor, less compaction per square foot, bigger footprint, more power. Yeah, just all around a better tractor.
The tracks are only 3.8 centimeters deep, which means less than half as much pressure on the soil as with other tractors. Fargo, North Dakota. This is where the Steiger 620 is built. Much hard work is expended to remain at the forefront of producing the most powerful tractors. Brian Vick is the managing engineer.
Oh, it's awesome. When I started working with Steiger, our largest tractor was 400 horsepower, which at the time I thought was huge. And then we progressed to 500 horsepower, and now we're at 620. And I'm just amazed at the additional power that we've been able to provide.
Steiger has produced high-powered all-wheel tractors since the 1950s. The first models had only 1/5 of today's power. Today, the mighty 12.9-litre engine can produce a maximum of 500 kilowatts of power, the most in its class.
When he gets into a tough spot into the field and needs extra power, this engine will respond with another 40% torque. And that's the power you need to pull through the tough spots.
Such a strong engine produces a lot of heat. The engineers have been tinkering for a long time to develop a suitable cooling system that fits within the tractor's parameters.
One of the biggest challenges we had was cooling the engine. And of course, 620 or 680 horsepower takes a very large radiator. If you look at this tractor, notice the slope of the hood and how low it is in front. That's intentional, gives an operator a very clear view in the front of the vehicle. So one of our constraints was that we would not allow the radiator to grow any taller. We didn't want to restrict operator visibility.
The engineers have managed to put the world's most efficient cooling unit under the hood. This is the only thing that lets huge fields be worked every day with no downtime. In addition, the tractor has the best fuel efficiency. It is also very robust and needs hardly any maintenance. That's important for farmers like Justin and Wayne Dutcherson. For their tractors never stand still for one day. The tractor is also used every now and again in emergency situations. Justin Dutcherson's truck has got stuck in the mud. The fully loaded truck weighs 26 tons, almost as much as the tractor. His father Wayne interrupts the field work to save the truck. No other vehicle can help now.
Oh, I got kind of buried. She's a little bit soft in the yard today. A little bit wet. Yeah, tug her out now though.
With such a heavy load, the tractor activates its turbo mode. It increases its torque by 40%, delivering 500 kilowatts of power.
Give it some tension here and get it out.
Thanks to the torque boost, the rescue mission is child's play.
Yeah, there she comes. It's coming out. Yep.
It's nice to have the big one for this. Yeah, it pulled it right out, no problem.
Yep. Right.
Yeah, it was easy pull.
After 19 hours, the workday draws to a close. The day's goal of 250 hectares has almost been reached.
We had a real good day today. Managed to get lots done because the tractor performed real good and didn't have any other problems, so we got a lot of work done today.
357 soccer fields. It's only possible with the Case IH Steiger 620, the most powerful tractor in the world. Germany, on the Butjadingen Peninsula. No other mobile crane can lift such heavy loads to such great heights as the Liebherr LTM 11200 9.1. The strongest mobile crane in the world.
There's nothing better on the market.
Wind farms are the chief area of operations for the LTM 11200. For no other mobile crane can lift the incredibly heavy components to a height of 100 meters and more. Today's task, to mount the 62-ton rotor consisting of hub and blades at the top of the wind turbine. Crane operator Marcel Ohler has been driving and operating the XXL crane for a year.
The wind turbine's hub is 108 meters off the ground. And to lift the rotor 108 meters, I have to extend the telescopic boom completely.
This LTM 11200 is equipped with a 52-meter 4-part telescopic boom and a 60-meter luffing jib made of lattice extensions. In different configurations, the telescopic boom can be 100 meters long and the luffing jib 126 meters. Depending on how it is used, the LTM 11200 can be set up in 5,000 different combinations. The so-called Y-guide keeps the crane stable despite the weight of the load and of the boom itself. The LTM 11200 is manufactured in Ehingen in southern Germany. It takes about 2 months to assemble the world's biggest mobile crane. Joachim Henkel heads up the statics division and helped to develop the LTM 11200.
The motivation for building an even bigger mobile crane came from developments in wind power. These were so complex that we broke totally new ground. We had never built a 9-axle vehicle. It was an experiment, but we were ultimately successful.
The ground vehicle alone weighs a mighty 108 tons. Since only 12 tons per axle are allowed on the road, 9 axles were the only solution.
Normally, it takes 2 to 3 years to develop a crane like this. Not this size, but with less load capacity. For this one, we needed a bit longer, 3 to 4 years, as it's a bit bigger.
Liebherr presented the new mobile crane for the first time publicly at the 2007 Bauma Trade Fair. Unit price 5 to 6 million euros. So far, about 65 of these vehicles are in use worldwide. Before a crane leaves the factory, it is extended to its maximum height, inspected thoroughly and tested.
The longer the systems, the more wind sensitive they are, especially when fully extended vertically. This crane must stand firm in every wind situation.
The crane, made of high-strength, fine-grained steel, can work in wind speeds of up to 9 meters per second. The vehicle itself is also tested before delivery. Its drive engine is an 8-cylinder turbo diesel with 680 horsepower. It can accelerate the 20-meter-long vehicle to a speed of 75 kilometers an hour. All 9 axles are steerable, thus allowing the crane to be maneuvered through tight curves despite its long length. The 4 rear axles also have partial automatic steering. The crane thus has a turning radius of only about 15 meters. Meanwhile, at the construction site in northern Germany, preparations are almost complete for lifting the rotor. Having secured the huge blades, workers attach them to the crane's hook block. First, Marcel carefully removes the 62-ton rotor from its mount. The crane is powered by a 367 horsepower 6-cylinder engine. But the rotors, which have a diameter of 82 meters, must first be brought into the upright position in order to be attached above.
The most difficult thing is that the cable operators must precisely see when the rotor is being slowly lifted. The cables must be given tension at the right moment, so the rotor does not move in the wrong direction. At any moment it could hit the guy line, especially on the right side, so the people working the cables really have to pay attention to what direction the rotor is facing as they lift it, so it doesn't hit anything. It's very precise work, and you need a lot of practice. It can be difficult to get it right at the beginning, but the crane can actually be operated with great precision.
While Marcel lifts the rotor, worth several €100,000, slowly to the top, his colleagues on the ground pull and push. Thanks to the way it is appended, the rotor turns upright.
I need to make very sure that I do exactly what the spotter says. As far as the crane is concerned, it's impossible to overload it. It shuts down when it reaches 100% of its load capacity. There's a bit of a safety threshold, so it's not like the crane is about to tip over at 100% capacity or anything. There's a safety threshold, so everything's still fine when it shuts down at 100%.
The crane has another safety feature, an integrated wind gauge that warns the operator about overly strong winds. But today, everything's fine. Meter for meter, the rotor approaches its objective. After about half an hour, the job is finished. The rotor is attached to the top of the wind turbine at a height of 108 meters.
We're always relieved when the rotor is up top and in the hub, or rather in the generator, and fastened. That's always the moment when we can relax.
And as soon as the rotor is fastened, the most powerful mobile crane in the world can move on to the next wind turbine. Germany, Bremerhaven. The Hög Traveler, the world's largest car carrier. If all the automobiles that fit in its belly were lined up end to end, they would stretch for 40 kilometers, twice as long as Manhattan. Today's goal, loading the ship in 12 hours. Germany, the world's leading exporter, ships 3.5 million new vehicles a year from here. Car carriers transport the cars around the globe. The largest, the Traveler, and its structurally identical sister ships. 6 a.m. Port Captain Kjell Arne Berger is responsible for loading up to 8,500 vehicles. He discusses final changes. All the cars must go to the right place. The eye of the needle is the ship's ramp.
The worst thing that can happen is that we have a breakdown with a big machine on the ramp, as you see out here, because then traffic in and out is stopping.
Once the ramp has been crossed, the cars are distributed over a cargo area of 71,400 square meters, the equivalent of 10 soccer fields. With a total of over 100,000 parking spaces, it is Europe's largest parking lot. Cars, pickup trucks, and heavy-duty transporters, all are waiting to be shipped. A scanner system registers all the automobiles that arrive in Bremerhaven. Shunt drivers collect the new vehicles from the lots and drive them on deck. Guides coordinate the parking. An important detail, the cars must be positioned so that the ship's balance is maintained. Parking is not the end of the job. Securing straps keep the vehicles from colliding with one another during storms on the open sea. Along its route, the car freighter constantly picks up new vehicles and unloads others. A logistical masterpiece. Time and again, vehicles must be relocated within the ship to keep the balance right. The adjustable ramps are an enormous help, an advantage of the modern ship.
It's much more flexible than other ones, so as far as you get to know all its varieties, so that you can lift the panels and liftable decks, it's more easy.
This completely new class of ship was designed and built in the Chinese port city of Xiamen. Engineer Jan Rune Merkin is the head of new building at the shipping company Hög Autoliners. His assignment with the Traveler, to construct the most economical and simultaneously the most ecologically friendly car carrier in the world. Size makes both possible.
We had to keep the vessel within a certain limit of length, which was less than 200 meters. And within those 200 meters, this 8,500 unit was the maximum that we could get out of that.
A berth is 200 meters long. For every additional meter, a second berth must be paid for. Yet the true engineering challenge was keeping the deck heights adjustable.
Liftable decks is a challenge because in particular for this ship, which have 5 of them, and one on top of the other.
The great challenge: the decks must be light enough to be lifted. At the same time, they must also be sturdy enough to support large, heavyweight vehicles. After only 2.5 years, the first ship of the new class left the shipyard, sent off with a loud blast.
You know, it's a great moment when a ship is completed and when the ship is leaving the shipyard. A usual procedure is that when they leave, they will use the air horn. And it's just like the air horn is saying goodbye, thank you, now I'm on my own.
Loading in Bremerhaven. The ramp can even take monsters like this vehicle. So big that trucks look like toy cars in comparison. A vehicle of this kind can weigh as much as 100 cars. But even this colossus is held only by securing straps. All in all, the ship transports vehicles with a total weight of up to 20,500 tons. Tractors, buses, trucks, diggers, and other construction vehicles fit into the ship's belly. Late afternoon, shortly before the end of the shift, an especially tall excavator must be loaded. It clears the stern opening easily. But then comes the interior ramp. Things get tight. And then the operation team notices that it will not fit through.
The deck was high enough for the unit, but the units are higher than in the booking.
An incorrectly recorded height, and now time is running. The port captain and his team must first tow the excavator away and then find a new parking space for it.
We can easily go into overtime if this happens and stays too long.
Kjell Arneberger rolls up his sleeves. The solution: the excavator will go on the main deck. That way there is no interior ramp to cause problems. The main deck is still too low, but thanks to the adjustable levels, 4 meters 80 centimeters quickly becomes 6.5 meters. Thus, there is room for the excavator too. After nearly 12 hours of work, the job is done. All the vehicles are on board. The port captain receives a final manifest. His job done for today.
Now I'm just happy that we finished and everything went quite smooth. We had some small problems with a unit that was a little bit too high, but totally over 600 units loaded and everything went smooth.
And tomorrow, this gigantic car carrier will already arrive at the next port. The largest container ship on Earth on its maiden voyage. When cargo is too bulky for other aircraft, this giant goes into action. The Antonov 124. And the longest train in the world. 4 kilometers of cars, cars, and more cars. It is the largest container ship in the world, the OOCL Hong Kong, a gigantic high-tech freighter made for international trade. One of the most fascinating, but also one of the most dangerous workplaces afloat.
At sea, no one can help you.
The freighter's risky mission, a delivery to the other side of the world in only about 35 days, and each hour of delay costs a fortune. Kolche, a seaport in South Korea. Here begins the maiden voyage. A risky ordeal for the swimming giant. It is designed for a carrying capacity of 191,000 tons. But so far, that is pure theory. Now we'll see if the ship can actually carry the enormous cargo and transport it in the short time frame. For Captain Lam Chung Fat, this voyage is the highlight of his career. and the ultimate test of his abilities.
I'm glad they called me because this is a very challenging thing to bring out a new ship like this. And yeah, I mean, everything is new on the ship and I have to set up the whole ship. So it's actually quite challenging.
Massive responsibility also weighs on another crew member. Deep in the ship's belly, Levi Chi makes sure that the ship will reach its objective in the time allowed. The chief engineer operates one of the largest engines in the world. But that Levi Chi ended up here was one big misunderstanding.
When I was young, I saw a movie called Love Boat. I said, wow, this man very happy with all the girls drinking and bar, not working. So I decided to be a seaman. And then I found out, container ship, no, you don't have all the bar, beer, party every day.
Instead, reality strikes. An extremely dangerous workplace, responsibility for a 2,200-ton engine, and enormous time pressure. The transport business is highly competitive. It is dominated by the shipping company that can transport the most containers for the lowest price and in the shortest time. The OOCL Hong Kong may be able to load more containers than any other ship, but on its maiden voyage, the mega freighter must prove that it can stick to the strict timetable. Only then will it be profitable. In Shanghai, the world's largest container port, the ship loads its first cargo ever. It can transport a total of 191,000 tons, corresponding to the weight of 336 A380 airplanes. Now we'll see how the ship fares under such a gigantic load. Till now, there has only ever been a computer simulation. For the crew, the coming days at sea will become their greatest challenge. The same time in South Korea, at Samsung Heavy Industries in Koche. It is the most sought-after shipyard in the world and as big as a small town. Over 35,000 people build 30 swimming giants each year, including 6 of the new premium class of ships, at a price tag of $950 million US. For engineers and shipbuilders in particular, the new mega container ships pose a tremendous challenge: more power with lower fuel consumption. All with one goal in mind: the lowest transport price per container. One man oversaw the entire process of building the new high-tech ship. The project leader, Kim Yong-ha.
A battle of giants reigns in the cargo industry. The cargo could also be divided over 2 ships. So, with a load of 21,000 containers, one ship could take 13,000 and another one 8,000. Some shipping companies do it like that. We can transport everything with one ship. We only need half the crew. We save ferry costs and time. So, this ship lets a transport company earn higher profits.
But how will the system fare on the high seas? The shipping company's new flagship, the OOCL Hong Kong, is loaded and on the way to Singapore, its first destination port. The crew must check and secure the cargo many times a day, especially the hazardous material and freezer containers. What looks like a smooth ride above water requires maximum concentration below. The engine room, a cathedral of engineering. The engine block is 9 stories high. Its tremendous power shakes the whole room, comparable to a small earthquake. The room's temperature is between 40 and 50 degrees Celsius. The metal is so hot that it can cause severe burns. Every day, Li Wai-chi points out the dangers of the job to his team.
Safety is the top priority. You got all your safety gears ready, is it? All your safety helmet, chip band, and everything is ready, is it? And in good order. And in engine room, when you sit here, no problem. When you go out, you must put the sleeve down because everything is hot. And don't touch any engine. No question? 有咩問題? 有没有问题？没有问题。Okay, move. Excellent.
Routine or the slightest carelessness, both can be fatal.
At sea, no one can help you, except I think of someone. God. God may help you, but sometimes he forget.
Chief Engineer Li Wai-chi keeps an eye on one part of the engine in particular, the propeller, and the propeller shaft connected to it. The problem, with a heavy cargo, the shaft is very sensitive to movements. Sharp changes in course, such as tight turns, can cause the shaft to rub against its casing, and in the worst case, start a fire. If the temperature exceeds a critical point, the chief engineer tells the captain to adjust the course and thus ease the pressure on the shaft. But today, everything is running smoothly and the ship maintains its course. Should the shaft ever spark a fire, this would be an enormous danger. In no time, the fire could spread to the entire ship. For this eventuality, nearly 800 CO2 bottles are on board. In an emergency, Li Wai-chi could flood the engine room from here with carbon dioxide and thus extinguish the fire.
I never used this before. It's luck. I think not many seamen have to use this system because this is the CO2 for the engine room. If we're going to put the CO2 to put out the fire, that's the last resort.
The bulk of the distance to the port of Singapore lies behind the crew. Li Wai-chi has performed his task. He has kept one of the world's largest and most powerful diesel engines under control. The first test run of the maiden voyage was a success. In the future, the OOCL Hong Kong will shuttle permanently between Asia and Europe, from China over Singapore through the Suez Canal, all the way to England, the Netherlands, Poland and Germany, a course to the other end of the world in a mere 35 days. Captain Lam Chung Fat will stay with the flagship. A total of 6 of these giants link the world's markets, delivering fresh supplies for our consumption.
It's absolutely unique. There is nothing like it.
The Antonov AN-124, the biggest serially produced transport aircraft in the world. The next stop, the East Midlands in Great Britain. Logistics manager Tom Blakeman is waiting here for the giant to arrive. Even for this airport employee, it is a special event every time. It weighs 400 tons and has engines as big as a car. So far, only 56 units have been produced. The Antonov is employed for exceptionally heavy transports. Tom Blakeman speaks with the flight manager.
Yeah. What time will you...
Pick up from hotel at 8 o'clock local.
Yep.
Then at 9 o'clock we start prepare aircraft for loading.
Yeah, okay.
In the giant's belly. Here it is not the length that matters, but the height. Loads of up to 4 meters 40 centimeters fit in the cargo hold. That's a world first.
It's always an awesome sight as it's taxiing towards you, yeah? And I think that's really the awe of it before you enter the cargo compartment. But once you enter this place, it's very much like a warehouse, a cathedral even.
For the AN-124 to be able to transport its heavy cargo, its designers had to take the engines to their limits. 4 turbines ensure that the giant reaches a maximum speed of 865 kilometers an hour.
Outsized machinery, aero engines are all designed to the maximum dimensions of that aircraft because they know that's the only way to fly it. There isn't a Western aircraft that can come close to it.
10 main landing gears, each with 2 wheels, ensure that the giant can land safely. The two nose landing gears have double tires and can even be retracted. For the AN-124's true highlight, cargo can be loaded in the front and in the rear. As opposed to other aircraft, the Antonov needs no ground-based aids, like loading ramps or lifting platforms. Rather, it is entirely self-sufficient. Today, the crew must also face a special challenge: quickly loading a 60-ton alternator and then transporting it to Seoul, South Korea. For the Antonov's charter flight, the client pays up to 300,000 euros.
Get going, kids. Once it's on, we're done.
Once the alternator is on the rails, two winches pull the €5 million cargo into the belly of the transport aircraft, all under the watchful eyes of the loadmaster, Sergei Bulachenko.
Loading finished on time, indeed 15 minutes early. So everyone's happy. It's all good. Now we're taking a break, since our work is done.
In the cargo business, lost time means above all lots of money. 4 hours after loading began, the giant's nose closes. Originally, the AN-124 was developed as a strategic military transporter for the Soviet armed forces. An advantage: thanks to the flat ramp in the nose, armored track vehicles can drive directly into the cargo hold from the ground. About 1.5 hours before takeoff, the 6-man cockpit crew arrives at the airport. Flying the giant requires a captain, a co-pilot, 2 flight engineers, a navigator, and a radio operator. Evgen Bashinsky is finishing his training as an Antonov pilot. For the 32-year-old Ukrainian, the cargo plane is one of the most thrilling aircraft of our time.
Computers make his job in modern aircraft. But here we should have a radio, navigator, flight engineer who control all the instruments and systems of this aircraft.
The airplane was designed in the late 1970s. Thus, every instrument must be operated and checked by hand. But for Evgen Bashinsky, this is not the Antonov's biggest challenge.
One thing makes this aircraft harder to control, harder to operate. Not each airport can provide enough clearance for us.
Behind the cockpit, there are quiet rooms for the crew. The crew travels with the AN-124 around the world for up to 3 months.
In this chamber, we have a small kitchen.
No routine emerges. Every assignment is unique.
You never get over familiar with this airplane because every time it comes in, you always learn something new about its capabilities.
After 7 hours, the giant takes off again. The next destination, Korea. The Antonov AN-124, truly an ultimate vehicle. Six locomotives and 342 cars. The Sishin-Saldana iron ore train is the longest train in the world.
Being proud of this longest train, couldn't ask for more.
This monster on rails has been operating since December 2007.
It's a monster of a machine.
Sishin, in the middle of South Africa. This is the location of one of the world's biggest iron ore mines. Since 1953, over 1 billion tons of ore have been dug out. At the moment, more than 8,000 people work in this mine, 14 kilometers long and 400 meters deep. A single track rail stretches to the port in Saldanha. The trip lasts 18 hours. a problem along the single-track line can quickly bring freight traffic to a complete standstill. One locomotive alone is insufficient to pull the 4-kilometer monster. It requires at least 5. The train is so long that it takes 15 minutes to drive by. Freight trains have run on the line from Sishan to Saldanha Bay since 1976. Until 2007, the train's maximum length was 2.3 kilometers. Manager Sadiq van der Skave helped to design the longer trains.
And the main reason for the line was to get the iron ore to the harbor as quick as possible. So we needed to get as much as we can, and that is how we designed the long trains.
At the moment, a train with 4 electric locomotives, 2 diesel locomotives and 342 iron ore cars is being prepared for departure. Responsible for coupling the sections, Christopher Muller-Olwe. He needs 1.5 hours to check all the sections of the train.
1 wagon for coupling, half a wagon coupling. Enclosure now 5 meters for coupling, 3 meters, half a meter.
The challenge, the line to the coast is single track. If only one section of the train stops working, all the traffic comes to a standstill.
One mistake can lead to a very big incident.
The consequence, millions in expenses. The whole train is controlled by the first locomotive. This functions by means of a radio system, RDP or radio distributed power. In addition to the electric locomotives, the diesel ones have meanwhile also been upgraded with a radio system.
What we have done now, we've also installed the DP radio, similar to RDP, to those locos now also, which are giving us a little bit more flexibility.
Since 2016, it has been possible to place diesel locomotives at any point in the train, if necessary, even as the lead locomotive. The primary responsibility lies with driver Paul Brandt Louvre. He alone controls the 4-kilometer-long steel colossus until the midway point. There, he trades places with the driver of the empty returning train and drives it back to the mine. His greatest challenge, he must estimate the energy consumption properly. The fully loaded heavyweight consumes a great deal of electricity.
It's very heavy, so I need to take a little bit more power than the guy on the empty train doesn't need much power. He can be in motion at a very low notch or so, and he can still continue. But for me, I need the power in order to get the train, keep it in motion.
He must decide upon the right combination of electric and diesel consumption. In the worst case, the returning train receives no power at all. That means a standstill. The radio waves give him continual feedback. Thus, he has all the information he needs for his estimation.
It's much easier to handle the train, it's much easier to control the train.
Constant monitoring is especially important for a train of this length. If the emergency brake is engaged, the Colossus would only come to a stop after 2 kilometers. But Paul Brandt Louvre loves the challenge.
I can't change it for anything in the world. It's something that I can be proud of, that I am proud of. Being here, and as I said, I'm here for the love of the job.
Only one driver is required to transport 34,000 tons of iron ore in one vehicle across South Africa. A state-of-the-art submarine on a secret mission, a nearly silent spy. A jet for around $90 million, the F-35 Lightning II. One of the most versatile military vehicles in the world. the CV-90. Taranto, the home port of the Italian submarine fleet. This vehicle is dangerous and fast. The U-212A, one of the world's most modern submarines, and the first with fuel cell propulsion, designed for the silent and invisible defense of home waters. SSK Todero is one of the 4 212A class subs Italy has. At 56 meters long and 11.5 meters high, it is considerably smaller than a nuclear submarine. In return, it is more versatile, for example, in shallow coastal waters. Its sail is one of the shortest in the world, making the sub extremely streamlined and fast. Like the rest of the outer hull, it is made of fiberglass reinforced plastic, a material difficult for sonar to locate. Tomorrow, the submarine is scheduled to depart on a training mission. Captain Giorgio Marini Bettolo coordinates the preparations.
Tomorrow we will leave for a 30 days mission. It will be an intelligence mission, and the Todero, the boat of the 212 class, is the perfect submarine to do this kind of mission.
As opposed to its predecessors, this submarine has 2 decks. The upper contains the operations center and the sleeping quarters for the 32-man crew. The lower deck contains the entire propulsion unit and 6 torpedo tubes. Chief Engineer Fabio Nicoletti is checking the fuel cell. It needs no external air, it generates no fumes, hardly any heat, and above all, no noise. Thus, it enables a long and nearly invisible deployment.
The first thing I thought when I heard about the possibility of the fuel cells on board of Italian submarines was that we could at least become as powerful as nuclear submarines and becoming air independent. And this allows us to say to be a very strong and efficient asset at sea to do our missions.
The energy from the fuel cell flows into a battery, which in turn powers an electric engine, which drives the propeller. But there is a diesel engine on board too, used for surface cruising.
I will open this door. We need to protect our ears because now the sounds get higher.
The 212A class was developed in the German Howaldtswerken, today ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems. Here, each submarine is crafted by hand. Build time over 6 years. Peter Hausschild is a shipbuilder and collaborated on developing the U-212A.
The 212 class was a real technical challenge, as it used many technologies for the first time. For example, we made use of very large-scale fuel cells that perhaps had not been serially produced since the Apollo program.
The history of German submarine building began in 1850, when Wilhelm Bauer constructed the Brandtaucher, one of the world's first submarines. A good 60 years later, there were already 141 submarines in the Imperial German Navy. Over time, the submarines got bigger, faster, and could dive ever deeper and longer. With the 212A class, the first of which was put into service in 2005, Germany developed one of the world's most modern submarines, a development that attracted attention worldwide.
The US Navy was very eager to test the subs and see if it could find them. So subs from the Italian and German navies went to the US to perform maneuvers, and the Americans had great difficulties finding them.
6 submarines of the 212A class are operated by the German Navy, whereas 4 have been sold to Italy. Taranto, early morning. The 32-man crew gets ready for its 30-day mission.
we are ready for our mission.
While the last crew members stow their gear on board, the operations center prepares for departure. And then it's time. The SSK Todaro launches. Submarines of the 212A class have two cutting-edge periscopes with a thermographic camera, laser rangefinder, GPS antenna, and night vision capability. The crew will check systems such as steering and sonar on a dive near the harbor. For during the maneuver, at a depth of 200 to 400 meters, everything must work perfectly. After the last hatch is closed, Captain Bertolo gives the command to dive.
Immersione. Timoniere governa per quota 14.
Quota 14. Immersione. Timoniere governa con massimo 3 gradi approvamento. Apri allagamenti. Apri allagamenti. Apri 1. Apro 1. 2 aperti. Apri 5. Apro 5.
First, the submarine dives to periscope depth, just under the water's surface. To this end, the engineers slowly flood the 5 ballast tanks. 150,000 liters of water rush into the tanks and press the sub underwater.
Timoniere quota 40.
Quota 40.
Using the X-rudder at the stern and the fair water planes on the sail, the helmsman takes the submarine down. How deep a submarine can dive is a well-kept secret. The U-212A class is supposed to be able to dive to more than 400 meters. For this test, the submarine will now dive to a depth of only 40 meters. The crew begins with the tests right away.
We will do a safety check from the different stations.
Next to fire, the greatest enemy of a submarine is water. The crew checks every spot where water could theoretically get in.
Ronda eseguita in tutti i locali con esito regolare.
Then the 6 sonar systems are checked. They are the submarine's underwater eyes and ears.
This very modern sonar allows us also to capture noise at very high distance and in many cases also at more than 100 kilometers. So it's a huge distance and this gives us a huge advantage in the operations.
The sonar systems are also very accurate. The sonar engineers not only hear whether a military, container or cruise ship is in the area, but often they can even pinpoint exactly which ship it is. After a good hour, all the tests are complete and the SSK Todaro prepares to surface again. To this end, the helmsman uses the rudders to rise to just under the water level. Captain Giorgio Marini Bertolo looks through the periscope to see whether it is safe to surface and no other boat is in the way. He can see up to 20 kilometers with the periscope.
Direttore, emersione. Alza 15.
Timoniere governa con massimo 3 gradi a pompamento. 3 gradi a pompamento. Apra allagamenti.
To rise, compressed air is blown into the ballast tanks, thus pressing the water out. This process lasts about a minute. In an emergency, though, the submarine could surface from a depth of several hundred meters within 30 seconds.
We are ready for our mission and we are looking forward to start it. And we are really lucky to start our mission on this kind of submarine, which is a really powerful asset.
Many ships travel the 7 seas, but only a few are as fascinating as these ultimate vehicles.
Technology makes it undefeatable in battle space.
It's going to change the way we fight wars.
The Lockheed Martin F-35, the most expensive defense project in the world. A fighter jet that almost makes flying child's play, in part because it lets the pilot focus entirely on flying the plane. Phoenix, Arizona. Luke Air Force Base. The United States military has ordered a total of 2,400 aircraft for about $400 billion. thus making the jet the most expensive defense project of all time. The home of the 61st Fighter Squadron of the US Air Force. The pilots here are trained to fly one of the mightiest stealth jets in the world. One of them is Major Will Andreotta. He has been flying this technological wonder for 3.5 years. Before heading for the aircraft, Major Andreotta puts on vital equipment. Especially important, pressurized trousers.
This will allow the blood that basically rushes down from the head to the feet when we pull those high Gs to be pushed back up, so we're able to keep consciousness while we're flying.
The jet sets new technological limits, and pilots are physically at their absolute limit.
So we're really well trained. We do this every day. We take it very seriously. So there's really no nerves whenever we go out there. It's just kind of the excitement and the anticipation of accomplishing the mission.
One thing left, the helmet. And it is considered the F-35's secret weapon. No one is allowed to examine it closely, but it is designed to make flying far easier. Before takeoff, Major Andreotta gets his flight briefing from the top 3 of the day. Major Jason Hall.
Ready.
All right, good morning, Lightning Flight. Welcome to the step brief. As far as the weather status, we got scattered clouds at 22,000 feet and winds are out of the southwest. You'll be stepping to aircraft 5069 today. There are no previous issues. Don't forget to bring your publications with you and sign out before getting to your jet. Any questions for me?
No questions. Bring it on.
Now it's time to go. The final steps in the air-conditioned office before heading out into the blazing Arizona heat, where one of the best fighter jets awaits, but also one of the most controversial. For its horrendous development costs have exposed the project to enormous criticism. The mechanics turn the jet over to Major Andreotta.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing today?
How are you doing today?
Excellent.
Awesome.
Are you all ready to fly?
Ready.
It looks good.
In every situation, even in wartime, the procedure is the same. The pilot is always responsible for the final check.
This is kind of my last little check just to make sure that all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted, you know, and make sure that I'm 100% comfortable when I get into this aircraft. But as I said, these guys, they're professionals. I have no qualms about going into this jet right now.
On today's schedule, a formation flight. A formation in which several F-35s fly closely together. No simple exercise, and one that requires a special level of trust among the pilots.
Really right now, it's just kind of go into the mode where training takes over. Everything we've learned, everything we've done for the last, for myself, for 3.5 years of flying this F-35 are really going to be put into what I do here in the next 45 minutes until we take off.
After takeoff, the pilot is supported tremendously by technology during the flight. A stroke of genius from the designers at Lockheed Martin. Here in Fort Worth, the jet has been in serial production since 2011. 3 different versions are built, for a total of 11 countries. Charles Bullness is Vice President in charge of the F-35 and has been there since the first sketches of the jet were made.
One of the biggest challenges is trying to get a 40,000-pound airplane to hover and land vertically. And this is actually the easiest airplane to land. You and I could easily land it, and the front wheel of the airplane would land right on the line on a runway. It's that easy.
The B variant is the only modern fighter jet that can land vertically. The need for wide open spaces is thus consigned to the past, a milestone for military jets.
Be proud of this day, be proud of this moment. The F-35, congratulations!
The F-35 has been received with boisterous enthusiasm at all air bases. Another special feature and a groundbreaking innovation, the inside of the helmet, which functions like a virtual reality headset.
The helmet that we have on this aircraft, no matter where he looks, he has everything he needs not only to fly the airplane, but to fight with the airplane. With a press of a button, he can look down between his feet, and that camera information is displayed on the visor of his helmet, so he can literally see through the floor of the airplane.
One jet is composed of 300,000 individual parts. 1,500 suppliers ensure the highest quality standards. In the American production facility, it takes only a few weeks to assemble the F-35. The cost, about $94 million. Imperfections are not tolerated. Every time, in every mission, it is ultimately the pilot's safety that is at stake.
Early in my career, I started in flight controls, so we learned very early on that you needed to make this jet safe every day, just to make sure that pilots could always return home to their families. I think this jet is making history. It's the best multi-role fighter in the world. It will be for 50 years. How all the technologies have been integrated to make this jet just an amazing machine is something that makes me very proud every day.
Back to Arizona and Luke Air Force Base. Major Andreotta is set to take off momentarily. He is one of 400 fighter pilots from around the world qualified to fly the F-35. In no time, he brings his jet to over 1,000 kilometers per hour. Years of training in a simulator make the flight a routine job, a job that sometimes includes very special moments.
There are times coming on the way back home or taking off where you just have that second you can just look outside, kind of pinch yourself for you being able to do what you do.
"45 minutes later, Major Andreotta lands the F-35 safely again on American soil. An everyday task for him in this ultimate vehicle. And yet, each time he gets an adrenaline rush that is familiar to only a few people on Earth.
All right, thanks, man. Appreciate it. You too, thanks. Everybody that works on this plane, flies the plane, we really have a great sense and pride in not only flying the F-35, maintaining the F-35, but also just serving our country and doing something that's bigger than us. So every day, it's a huge honor and privilege to come to work.
All in a day's work for man and machine. The Lockheed Martin F-35, a fighter jet that has set a new benchmark for military jets for many years to come. Hardly any combat vehicle is as versatile as this one, the CV-90 Infantry Fighting Vehicle. Equipped with a superb chassis, state-of-the-art systems and powerful weapons, it is the most modern of its kind. Setermoen in northern Norway. In total, the Norwegian Army has 144 of these infantry fighting vehicles, which differ from CV-90s used in other countries above all with respect to weapons and drive systems. All models of the CV-90 family have the same basic platform, but their final design varies depending on the countries that use them and the locations where they are to be deployed. On today's program in Setermoen, a combat exercise for the CV-90 crews. Company Commander Peter Bakkejord explains the assignment in the briefing.
They've been ordered to do pre-combat checks on their vehicles and their personal equipment, and they will be handed out live ammunition, and then they will head out to the live fire area.
The mission: to drive 5 kilometers in tactical formation to the firing range in the mountains, and there to engage various targets. In addition to the main weapons and the machine gun, the Norwegian CV-90s have a remote-controlled weapon station on the roof, with a thermal camera and a target laser. They also differ from most other tanks in that they drive on rubber tracks. These cause less vibration and are thus gentler on the sensitive technology. Mathias Sorensen has commanded the CV90 for 2 years.
I like to compare the CV90 to a multi-tool because it fits pretty much any mission. It has the armor, it has the mobility, it has the weapons like the cannon, the machine gun, the remote weapon system where you are able to mount different weapons, and you have the soldiers in the compartment who can fight along the vehicle. So together we are able to defeat any enemy.
Once preparations have been finished, the driver starts the 810 horsepower V12 engine. As an infantry fighting vehicle, the CV90 brings infantry soldiers to their field location and then supports them in combat. In addition, the 34-ton vehicle has excellent driving features. It can reach a high speed of 70 kilometers an hour and climb slopes with a grade of up to 60%. In the 1990s, Norway became the second country after Sweden to decide to use the CV90. In 2012, it increased its number of vehicles up to 144. Major Per Rune Hansen is the technical project leader for the CV90 in the Norwegian military.
All the armored infantry fighting vehicles have more or less the same firepower or the protection, but it was the mobility that was really important for us.
The CV90 was designed in the 1980s for the Swedish military by the defense contractor Hägglunds, today BAE Systems. The vehicle was supposed to feature high tactical and strategic mobility, to be able to engage a variety of targets and offer large potential for growth.
We had compared with the vehicles that we had in the 90s, the vehicle looked quite the same, but it's a whole new different vehicle. We got rubber tracks on it, which reduces the fatigue on the people in the combat compartment. We got a remote weapon station, and we have an integrated BMS system also, which allows it to be an easier situation for the commander.
Meanwhile, the soldiers have arrived at the live fire area. Before shooting, the crews must check all the weapon systems. It is part of the exercise. In order for everything to run smoothly in an emergency, they must consistently train all standard operations.
If we are doing a good job here, we're also more precise when we drive and when we are going to shoot later.
The most important element, the sight. It has an integrated daytime and thermal imaging system, as well as a laser rangefinder.
Now we're making sure that the shooter is on the target, and with this we can see.
The so-called sight checker lets driver Kim Nordanger see whether the sight and the gun are properly synchronized. Today, they are using practice ammunition, called cold ammunition, which does not explode upon impact. Now, the exercise begins. So that everything can be monitored from the inside during a mission, the CV90 has a digital battle management system. Color screens display all relevant information for the commander, such as a map showing the location of friendly and foreign troops. Since today's exercise is purely focused on target practice, orders are radioed in from the company commander. The CV90 can fire from a 30mm gun, 7.62mm coax machine gun, or a variety of weapons from the remote weapon station. The crew's final exercise. 3 targets at a distance of about 1,500 meters.
All the rounds are dead on target, center. So they're doing the job right. They've done the small things very good, and that's very important. Do all the procedures correct, and the rounds hit the target.
It is not only the soldiers who have made a good impression during this training exercise. The CV-90 has also once again shown why it is an ultimate vehicle.